Centuries ago, this valley in northwestern New South Wales was filled with the campfires of Aboriginal hunter-gatherers. As time passed, the campsites were covered over and buried, until erosion slowly exposed them again, leaving a surface scattered with stone knives, spearheads, axes and fine blades. This landscape is remarkable. Everywhere you look, you can see artefacts. I mean, look at these. They're just tools, maybe 1,000 years old. Isn't that just incredible? Today, archaeologists believe they can use the stone tools left behind to piece together the story of the landscape and the people who lived in it. Not by digging things up and taking them away, but by mapping them. It's called landscape archaeology.
One of the great benefits and also the great problems of doing landscape archaeology in regions like this is that you found tens of thousands of artefacts distributed over tens of thousands of square metres. And this is a great data source, but it also poses quite substantial technical problems.
So Simon Holdaway has been pioneering a new kind of archaeology, one that needs armies of students, very little digging, and a whole lot of technology. First, the valley is pegged out into squares. Then, using geopositioning satellites, their exact coordinates are entered into computers. Each square is then given a unique number.
383, okay.
Another team comes along and studies each of the squares. When they spot an artefact, a stone knife or a broken blade, they tag it with its own number.
Tagged and ready to go. There's some specific sort of features that you can look out. Like for instance, this is a bulb on the back here. This is only formed with a hammerstone. It's come off and it's created this, what's called a bulb of percussion. And it basically sits on a core like that and it'll pop off like that. And that's an identifying marker to say that that's actually been made by human hands.
Would you actually use that as a tool?
Oh yeah. Well, this is still quite sharp. You could cut it. You could cut some meat with that. You could skin. Let's have a try.
You know,
yeah. It feels quite good in the hand as well.
It does too. You could sort of shave with it, couldn't you? You want to try
Just
that?
The max dimension's 41.
41.
Once the artefacts have been highlighted, another team analyses them more closely. One examines the characteristics of each piece and measures them in detail, while the other enters all of this into a palm-top computer.
It's quite detailed information, isn't it?
Yeah, there's about 12 variables I think we record on each one. It helps you. I mean, it's better to have too much data than not enough all the time as well.
With the artefacts analysed, a geomorphologist looks for clues, trying to understand what the land was like back then. Stud Creek was once a much more pleasant place to live. But when Europeans arrived, things began to change. Their animals ate everything in sight, right down to the roots. With nothing to hold it, the soil just blew away, exposing Aboriginal tools that had been buried for centuries. The Wankamurra people who once roamed this land are now helping archaeologists to understand it. In return, the Wankamurra reconnect with their past. It's the way archaeology is done today, each with something to learn from the other.
So you can pick one out there, and I should be able to go and tell you where it is on the computer.
We get a lot of students up there and archaeologists, and they just say, well, they want to know what the people used to eat, you know, where they found their water and stuff like that, and where were they, you know, the best camping places in those days, things like that. All that comes in when you know, and I'm learning all the time, and they're learning what's through us.
Yep.
My daughter goes to school in Sydney and she wants to be an archaeologist, so she does her school experience over there every year and stuff like that, yeah.
Sometimes I have dreams about...
Really?
Yeah, I have dreams about rocks.
What do you dream about?
Just like me picking up a rock and then seeing maybe my great uncle or someone sitting there and carving or napping another rock. I just have weird dreams like that.
Each night, the reams of information collected during the day is downloaded onto floppy disks, then uploaded into powerful computers. That same night, Simon Holdaway merges the data and presto, instant results. Over a map of the Stud Creek site, the 55,000 stone tools already analysed are added. Each red dot represents a single artefact. By seeing how the tools are distributed, Simon Holdaway can begin to understand how the landscape was used. Stone tools were made and sharpened in one place, wood was carved in another, kangaroos skinned in one place and cooked somewhere else. This is great. So you do the work during the day, and if you're not too tired, you can actually enter it into the computer at night and see the results instantaneously.
Exactly. You spend a 10-hour day working out in the freezing wind, and then you spend a 6-hour evening building coverage at night.
Let's get just a few stone first.
To find out how old the campsites are, you need charcoal for carbon dating, the kind you find at the bottom of ancient earth ovens. Ovens a lot like the one Badger Bates is building for tonight's kangaroo roast.
You can cook kangaroo, emu, echidna, just about anything.
Luckily, Stud Creek is dotted with ancient fireplaces, as Dan Witter knows.
Well, what we have here is one of these hearths that's been halfway dug out, and you can see the bottom there, and actually you can see a little fleck of charcoal there, which we'll be able to extract to get a date. And Bob here is busy working at another way to try to get a date, and I'll have to get him to explain that.
What's that, Bob?
Yeah, what I'm doing is taking some samples here to look at the magnetism in the soil underneath the fireplace. When the fire's made, it cooks that soil, it resets its magnetism so that the magnetism is parallel to the Earth's magnetic field at the time that the fire was made. Now that field moves around with time. It's different now to what it was then, and we can take the direction that we measure in these and work out the age of the fireplace from that.
We've got radiocarbon dates that go back to about 1,500 years before present. So Aboriginal people during the last couple of thousand years would have moved into this valley we see down in front of us. We know this because there are artefacts distributed literally everywhere across it. And it's this distribution that really tells us something about the way they used valleys like this. We know that people moved into this valley. When they saw it, they didn't just see one little campsite. What they saw is a whole valley, and the whole valley was their campsite. And by looking at the distribution of different sorts of artefacts, clusters of hearths, people using the stone source like the gibber plain out there, it's the stone pavement, the brown area in the distance. We know that people were doing different sorts of activities over really big areas, tens of thousands of square metres, just this whole valley.
6.
This technique has given archaeologists the most detailed insight into how Aborigines lived and used the land in ancient times. The fact that none of the artefacts are taken away is a real plus for Aborigines.
I work with the national parks now for about, 14, 15 years, and this is one of the best studies I've seen where the archaeologists not coming out with a big trailer on the back of their four-wheel drives, picking a lot of artefacts taken away, and then they're going to study it, and then, lots of time they don't bring it back because they got a room full of it. But here, what they're doing here is the stuff they pick up, they study it and put it straight back, and it just goes straight into the computer for future generations and that.
Piecing together the puzzle takes time, 5 weeks a year over a number of years. Along the way, we learn more about the past, and each culture learns more about the other.
Excuse me, everyone. What do you reckon about the kangaroo and ashes?
That's all for Quantum this week.